Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Mandy Whiteside. I work at KARE 11. I've worked there for 13 years. I've never worked at another media outlet ever in any other market or field. So what I can give you today is sort of my take on how we do things from a media partnership perspective at KARE 11. Obviously, other media entities will do things differently, whether they're broadcast, radio, print, but a lot of these points sort of transcend what medium you're talking about, and they're just good things to think about. If you have worked with a media entity before, maybe at the end you'll have a couple of tips that you'd like to share, and I definitely want to leave time at the end for questions. So, a little bit, 11 tips, because we're all about the number 11. That you need to know to make the media work for you. I think that's one of the first things to keep in mind in a media partnership is that you're driving the partnership. It shouldn't be the media, so you need to kind of figure out those ways that you can manipulate us to help you achieve your goals. So the first one I want to talk about is timing. We're a 24/7, 365 industry, so timing for us is super duper important. When I get proposals, timing is probably the first thing that will get me on the track to saying yes to a partnership or no to a partnership. And that timing depends on how much lead time we have between now and then, and also what else we have going on at that particular time. So I would encourage you to think in advance, but not too far, because we are a 24/7 industry. So unlike my brother works at Target and they're now planning Christmas 2015 or whatever, we're still planning for this summer and next fall. So that's sort of our timeline. Starting a conversation 6 to 9 months out. And we typically plan a quarter ahead from a very specific timing standpoint. I'm not sure what's going on with my animation, but there you are. Don't be afraid to connect when something comes up. Think beyond the events. If you have a cool story, if you have a cool person, if there's something cool happening, it doesn't have to just rely on or be based around an event. Feel free to connect with the media when something is coming up that you think is worthy. This is really weird. And then the other thing that I'll say is to do some research into what else the media entity is partnering on. I'll use the example right now, we're a Race for the Cure partner, which is always Mother's Day weekend. And a little bit of research will let you know that we have a big initiative on Mother's Day weekend. So if there's something else that's happening right at that time, we're probably not your best bet to go to from a media partnership standpoint. So don't waste your time with coming to us. Look to see then maybe it makes sense to go to a different media outlet first. So doing a little bit of looking into that before you go forward could be helpful as well. Next question is to know what you're asking for. First point I'll say with that is think in specifics. Generalities aren't super helpful. A lot of times I'll hear from nonprofits and they'll be looking, would you be interested in being a media partner? Well, what does a media partner mean to you? I don't care, whatever you'll do. That's not super helpful. Because there's a lot of things that we can do, but you may have some starting points. So think in specifics. What is it that you're wanting us to help with? I often encourage people to make a wish list and literally include everything in the kitchen sink. Chances are you're not going to get everything in the kitchen sink, but it gives us a starting point, and you may have some really cool ideas that we may not have thought of, or you might have some really cool ideas that lead us to think of something different and kind of build off of that. So if you're making that wish list and thinking of all the things that would be great in a media partnership, it's a super good starting point. Again, know what you want to get out of it. Are you looking for more participants? Are you looking for big donors? Are you looking for volunteers? So that we can build what it is that media partnership includes around what it is that you're trying to get out of it. And it's also good from a planning perspective to know what is it ultimately that we want. Chances are it probably has to do with dollars, but is it just dollars or is it people and those kinds of things? And then the last point in knowing what you're asking for kind of leads back to that wish list. You start with your ideas, but then be flexible and nimble and open to sort of the evolution of what that looks like. And just because if we have an ongoing media partnership, we don't do things the same way every year because it gets tiring for us. It probably gets tiring for you as the organization. And if it's tiring for us, then it's definitely tiring for the people in the community. So having that flexibility and being willing to change as we go is also key. Sorry, I can't read. What do you have to give? A lot of times when I talk to folks from nonprofits, they'll talk about what they want from us. But there are a lot of things that you have as organizations that we want and that ultimately we need. So a little bit of thinking ahead of what you have to give us is a huge help. Ask yourself what makes you unique or what makes you different. Think about it from an organization standpoint and think about it from an event standpoint. And I'm going to use a few examples. And if you're in the room, congratulations, I'm using you as an example. They're all good, but just kind of to spur. So 5Ks or walks, lots of organizations do them. That's not me, by the way. Sarah, I should make you sing a song. I found it. I could answer. That's right. So I'm going to use the example of Children's Cancer Research Fund. I don't know if anyone is here, but they do a walk every summer, and it's a 5K, and it has a walk and a run component, and there's nothing wrong with that. But last year, they changed things a little bit, and they took their 5K, and they took the entrance fee off of it. And they made it more of an awareness, of a come together, let's support children's cancer programs. And they brought organizations that also support children's cancer-related programs, and they had information out. That was unique and different, and it was a cool angle for us to partner on because we could talk about the fact that you want to come out and just be part of the support network. You don't have to pay $25. You can fundraise, but ultimately it's free. So think about those kinds of things. It doesn't have to be the whole event has to be super unique, but just what are those little elements that may make your event different from others? Story ideas. Now, from a television perspective, we are a visual medium, and we need those stories that are compelling and are emotional and really get people interested in the cause. And that's what you guys have in spades, are those people and those amazing stories. So think ahead before you come to meet with a media entity, what do you have? And some of those, are you willing to give them up on a proprietary basis? Like, this is an exclusive to KARE 11. Awesome. We would love to have that. Obviously, you can say this is yours to have, A, if you're our media partner, and B, if you decide you want the story by XYZ date. And if you pass on the story, I'm going to take it to somebody else, then that's our job to decide if we want it or not, and then we can't be mad if it ends up somewhere else. But those stories are great. I'll throw this out there kind of in the realm of this too. While stories are proprietary and we love having that exclusive, that inside look that nobody else has, my perspective on things, and it may not be the same at other media entities, event coverage, so the day of, it should be open to everybody. I would love if everybody just watched KARE 11 News, and that was it. Then having us cover your event, you've reached everybody. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So making sure that all of the TV stations in the market and all of the newspapers and all of radio stations know what's going on is helping you reach everybody and let everybody know about the cause. So don't think that if we're your media partner, you can only reach out to us to cover your event. You should be getting that information out to everybody. Make sense? Okay. Access goes along with the story ideas. I'm going to use an example for this for Treehouse. We have an ongoing partnership with Treehouse, and every year with their gala, they have a national entertainer. And that connection has provided us access to interview people like Tony Dungy or the family from The Blind Side, one country singer who won the American Idol. Help me. Thank you. Carrie Underwood. This year it's Josh Groban. We wouldn't have access to things like that without our media partnership. So what are those kinds of things that you guys can help us with that we wouldn't have otherwise? And then the last thing is people who are willing to share their stories. Make sure you have those folks within your organization. Otherwise, it's really hard for us to tell the story. If you think you have them or you think you can find them, make sure before you come and bring us the idea. It's really hard when you're like, oh, I know I can find someone. And we decide we want to cover a story and we want to interview someone, and then it comes back as, sorry, nobody wanted to talk. We can't tell the story in the way that we would want to. So make sure you have those folks in your back pocket. Broaden your thinking. Regular requests we get, can we air a PSA? Can we have an MC? And will you do live coverage? PSAs are sort of hard, actually, because from a television standpoint, we have finite inventory. So while I would love to do a PSA for every partnership we have, it's just not feasible. But you can still include it in your wish list. MCs, I'll mention quickly, different entities do things differently. All of our MCs, the anchors make their own decisions. So coming to me for an MC, I'm going to ask you to go back to Belinda or Randy or Julie or Kim Inslee. Other entities, it may be through the community relations person. So I would recommend that you go right to the person you want. Because if they can make the decision, they will. If they can't, they'll send you to the person you need to talk to. And then live coverage, while we're really good about covering the events that we're partners on, as an entity, I can't ever guarantee news coverage. It depends on what's going on in the world. There's no value associated with it. It's just one of those things from a content perspective that I can never guarantee you that we can be there. We'll make every effort, but it's never a guarantee. Also think about who you're asking. Make sure you're thinking beyond just TV. Who could you ask from the radio world? Who could you ask from the print world? Newspapers, magazines. And don't forget about those hyper-local, your community newspaper, Patch, those kinds of groups who still have that megaphone and that microphone that can help get people to your events. We play very nicely, I can speak from ourselves, where we'll work with any radio partner, we'll work with any print partner. So by having one of each, you're really broadening your reach. And then lastly, sponsorship versus paid promotion. Everything that we do is at no cost. We don't ever have dollars that we give as a part of a media partnership, and I think that's pretty common for most media entities, but there are ways that you can take your sponsors and turn them into additional promotion for your event. So if that's something, if you have a great partner who wants some more recognition for what they're doing, mention that to the different media outlets, and their sales folks can team up with your management and go back to those partners and just broaden that exposure for you. Think beyond events. Kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but what else is important to your organization? Is there an awareness month? Most organizations or causes have an awareness month. Are there other times of the year? Is legislative time a really big time for you? Clue us in on those kinds of things beyond just the event. What else can the community engage with you? Is it just the event? Can they come and volunteer at different times? Are there other ways? Can they send cards to soldiers over the holidays? Those kinds of things. And then lastly, kind of going back to what are your needs beyond funds? Sometimes it's hard to ask people for dollars. I use the example, we did a partnership with Make-A-Wish just last week, where we did a drive on air for airline miles. Didn't cost people a penny, but it provided them an opportunity to get rid of frequent flyer miles that they may not have been able to use in other ways. So sometimes thinking of those creative things that are beyond just dollars can turn into events as well. Build and maintain relationships. Think about reporters, think about anchors, and think about people who are behind the scenes. They are your greatest ally. While I ultimately approve and execute most of our partnerships, 75% of them come because our anchors have a direct connection to an organization. Keep them informed on what you're going on, and just remember that Julie Nelson has the microphone every day. So while she has a script that she's supposed to read, there's nothing to say if she's passionate about something, she might not find a way to work it in. Example, this morning I was meeting with the Arthritis Foundation. Rena Sargentopoulos is passionate about the Arthritis Foundation. Tim Mahoney was on the Saturday show. The woman from the Arthritis Foundation, hi Liz, sent Rena a text and said, don't forget he's going to be at our upcoming fundraiser. Do you know what she said when she tagged out of that? And if you want to see Tim Mahoney, check it out. He's going to be at the Justin Morneau Casino night. not written in her script, but she has that connection, and she had the microphone. Start early and follow up. They're busy folks. They're working all the time. They sometimes forget. So if you've planted the seed, you can kind of sow it as you go along. And then lastly, I'll just mention quickly social media. It's a great way to get a conversation started. Send a tweet to Jared Sebesta, hey, we got to walk next weekend. What's the weather going to be like? He'll reply, and then now you've just broadened that network. Moving quickly along, finding connections, similar. Think of who has a tie to your cause. Talk to your board members. They can get you in on meetings that you wouldn't believe. And then think about what has worked in other chapters. Knowing that Make-A-Wish, we never would have done that miles drive if they couldn't show me that they'd done it in San Diego and they'd done it in South Dakota. Be creative. What makes it unique? We talked about that. Think visual and emotional elements like your stories. And ask yourself, why should I care or why would anyone else care? Be patient but persistent. Like I said, we're busy folks. Sometimes we forget. Don't feel like you're being a pest. Sometimes no is more of a not at this time, so keep on top of it, and you never know when it might come back up. Be flexible. Be ready to act at a moment's notice. Short on time, but I just want to tell you a quick story. If I call you because we want to do a story in 2 hours and you can't find someone, chances are they're not going to call you again. But if they say, we want to do this story and we want to do it today, and you come through with a, pardon my French, kick-ass person that we can interview, you're on the top of the list for future stuff. So have those people in your back pocket that you can produce at a moment's notice. And then lastly, follow up. A thank you goes a long way, and it doesn't have to be an elaborate cookie bouquet. Just seriously, a note gets noticed. Results and impact kind of help us bring the story full circle, and it can be another way for you to get some more mention out there. If we can say we were at this event and, hey, it raised $50,000, it's one more mention for your group. And then keep the connections going. Don't let it die just because your event is done and you're not going to have to think about it for another year. Keep that connection going throughout the year. So that's, in a nutshell, my 11 tips. Hopefully you've all been writing feverishly, because I can't really see. But anyone have any questions? I think I have a couple minutes. Yes? Yep, that's where I would recommend is, and email tends to be the best form of communication. Phone calls are hard, voicemail. Email is best. If you go on most media entity websites under the FAQs or a community section, you'll find that person to connect with. You all have my email address somewhere. So, other questions? Yes? Editorial approval, receiving that. If it's a story, probably not. Sometimes you can, be there when the interview is happening or those kinds of things and be able to have a little input there, but we typically won't show a story before it's aired to anyone. If there's something really sensitive in it, there may be a special exception, but as a rule of thumb, no. And that's from a news perspective. I mean, other forms of media may have different approaches, but from ours, that's sort of our proprietary component. Good question. Anything else? Well, if you think of a question later, feel free to email me. Thank you.